is not an isolated ecosystem. The external environment plays a part in how a pregnancy evolves into the birth of a human being. So just like business, startups need an ecosystem within which to thrive. And so our very next speaker will take us through a presentation to help us appreciate the ecosystem in Ghana's context, and more importantly, where the gaps are, where the opportunities are, and how you can plug in and contribute to an ecosystem that someday would birth globally dominant IT businesses from Ghana. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Na Ajekai Ajay to take us through our presentation. Oh, that's wonderful. Na is not here. Okay. Then the presentation after that is also on startups. I'm going to wait for just a minute. If I don't have 9 here, then we'll move straight to funding startups. Because I can see the speaker for that particular presentation right here with us. Okay, well, I've just been given the green light to move one presentation up. So I'm sure you'll understand the ecosystem. So what you're going to need to do is to unpack this part of the presentation and then assemble it once you've taken note of the presentation that should have preceded this one. With that, please help me welcome Ethel Kofi to give us a presentation on startup funding in the technology space. She has enough information and experience to go around the world 3 times, so make sure you applaud even stronger. Sorry, no pressure.
No pressure, no pressure. Good afternoon. So I got a call and I was given a topic, and I was a little worried about the topic because I wasn't clear on who would be in the room. And so maybe one of the first things I'll do, because we're talking about raising money and startup funding. So how many people in the room here are students? Students in school about to... Oh no, please raise your hand properly. Sorry. I'm not, I just need to understand the audience a little bit. Cecilia. Okay, fair enough. How many people are entrepreneurs? You're a founder, you started to build your company. Okay, all right. There's an intersection between the students. Okay, where's the intersection? People who are both starting a company and both in school. Ah, interesting. Can I see the startups again? Just the founders and startups. Okay. All right. So there's a mix in the room, which doesn't help very much, but okay. So what has become very exciting is somebody starts a company, and then you'll see the newspaper article, they've raised $1 million, they've raised raised this funding, and it's plastered all over the place, and people get very excited about that. And I think it's become sort of like the norm of how people think businesses are built. But the truth is, that's maybe 10 to 20% of what actually happens. It's just the loud 10 to 20%. Most companies bootstrap. When I mean bootstrap, use your own resources, you use your own skill sets, you build to a certain level. And so I wanted just, because sometimes when we talk to young people who are building businesses, the first thought is that I must go and raise funding. And like I said, the skill sets to raise funding and the skill sets to run a company are sometimes not the same skill sets. And sometimes we spend a lot of time running after, somebody raised $1 million, me too, I can raise $1 million. Right. Now, what are my qualifications for being on stage here? Currently, I have two things I do that sort of help me understand the space. I'm on the investment committee, I'm on the investment committee of Zenary Capital. Zenary Capital is a 120 million fund dedicated to women and women startups. And I get to sort of see behind the scenes of the decision-making process to fund startups. I'm also on the advisory committee of a Kenyan VC that looks at medtech, so medical devices, that sort of thing. And again, the advice I have, before I go into the technicalities of what is VC, whatever, the advice I have for the people in the room here that are thinking about how to raise and what to raise is that the decision, your approval, outside of all the technicalities of, is your financials good, do you have a great product, that sort of thing. The decision is sometimes made outside of the investment committee. It is that, do we trust the founder? Do we believe in the founder? Do we want this founder, have we seen enough that we want this founder to succeed? And a lot of times, I think that's where startups fall short. So you do this thing where you prepare your documents, you show up, and in that 10-minute pitch, you give us all the information, then you leave. But we don't know who you are. And I think for startups, the work has to be done in making sure that the person who's going to cut you the check, whether it's the angel investor, who, by the way, is taking from his own pocket, so it's more, he's very, very, or he or she is checking double, even as opposed to, an investment committee where sometimes, sometimes it's not really your money, so sometimes you can take a step back. It's making the investor believe that you can be trusted and you are going somewhere with the money that you are given. And then we've heard the stories. There have been a few stories this year where people didn't tell the truth to their founders, to their investors, and then where money's disappeared in weird, the money is not for you to buy a new car and build your house. It's to build your company. So anyway, that's the intro. So let's go into the actual, look, the venture capital model. How many people in the room understand the venture capital way of raising funding? Okay. Ooh, okay. So we have to go back to what VC and venture capital is. So the simplest way to put it is for instance, an example would be, say, your pension funds. A pension fund, they collect people's pensions. They've got to, in order for them to be able to pay out when the person in 40 years, it goes on pension, they have to invest that money and get returns for that money. So sometimes a pension fund would give money to a venture capital fund and say, hey, take this money and manage it for me. I'm expecting 100 times return in 10 years. That venture capital fund will now look around and say, which startups do I think in the next 10, 20, 30 years even if I put $5,000 or 5,000 cedis, I could get in 10 years 500,000 from the startup. And so they go through that process. And so the venture capital fund really in the end is a fund manager. They are managing money on behalf of other people. So sometimes even, I don't know if this happens, so sometimes your teachers' pensions, all these ones might end up, I don't know if this happens in Ghana, but might end up with a VC, and the VC will then find companies to put that in. The VC has to do its work, which is why I say it has to check that you are who you say you are. Your financials make sense, you are going somewhere, you have a team that can execute, you have a product that is worth investing in, and you are going to stick around, and you've got what it takes to stick around for 10, 20, 30 years for them to be able to either you sell the business or somebody else buys equity in the business, and they can also take that money out and take their management fees and then, give the initial people who gave you money, so it might be teachers' pensions or healthcare pensions, give that money back so that they can pay somebody's pension. So it's a whole ecosystem. Now, Ghana has done very well in terms of attracting foreign venture capital. So we are top 5, at least in the tech startup ecosystem, of countries that attract the most startup funding. Now, when we say we are top 5, it's very nice, but then you realize that the first 4 take about 78% of the money. And then we kind of take we split the rest. But because we are in top 5, we get very excited. Because we also named as part of it. But like I said, maybe 10% of startups will raise funding. I'm just being honest with you. Now, what's happened in the last couple of years is that there is less and less money available. I want to read the stats because I wrote them down here. Oh, okay. And I printed the one without the stats. Okay, so from 2021 to now, every year we've had about 20 to 30% less money come in for startups, right? So, the height was 2021, where after COVID, a lot of money was going to fintechs and coming from sort of foreign VCs and internal VCs. And then after that, there seems to be a tiredness from the VCs. So less and less, so year on year, this is on video. So if I'm wrong, but it's more than 30%, about 20 to 30% year on year decline. So there is less money available. The other thing is there used to be a lot of money available for fintechs. So those of you building payment apps, those of you building things that have to do with financial services, and now you are competing with clean tech, so climate apps, companies that are looking into climate, clean energy, they are also raising more money. And so, again, that's just the dynamics of it. There is a saturation of the traditional VC markets. The other thing is, for those who've raised money before, they will tell you there is a lot of pressure. If someone's giving you $1 million and they sit on your board, they are going to expect movements. And so there's a lot of pressure on you. There's also, if it's 3 of you that started the company, once you start taking venture capital money, you've gone from owning 10% to maybe 10%, and that's from 30% to maybe owning 10%. That's fine if that's something you want. But if that's not something you want, you are losing your company bit by bit. And then there's just, like I said, there's just less money overall. We're in Ghana, where the top 4 are Egypt, South Africa, Nigeria, and Kenya. And then we're number 5. We haven't done a good job in internally creating funds to fund startups. there are a number of pocket funds, but there isn't a coordinated, I mean, there's been a venture capital trust fund, which I think has done a good job, but just internally, there's not a lot of money. I'm not dissuading you from going for venture capital. I'm just saying there's very little of it. And so the other options, because also raising money is sometimes a full-time job. I have worked with founders who, one of my founders who was very introverted, so likes to put his head down, work hard, and get things done. And we needed to raise, I think, 5 million or something like that. And every time he would go into these meetings, he just didn't have energy because he's an introvert, right? And so he would, be very calm and methodical. And for almost 12 months, he would go into meetings and they just wouldn't follow up. So that's also part of it, right? You have to come in with energy and show that excitement about your product and things like that. So this is why most of my talk is going to be about the alternatives, right? So the alternatives to venture capital. Your first alternative is family and friends, whether you like it or not. Your first, even Jeff Bezos, his parents, the money he earned when he worked on Wall Street, I think, and then his wife's parents, I think his ex-wife's parents, they put money together. So if Jeff Bezos has done it, you can go and ask your cousins to invest in your business, right? So your easiest way to raise money is family and friends, people who know you and people who believe in you. Now, if you can't get your family and friends to give you money, that's also, you understand? That also tells us something about you and whether people trust you to deliver. They also, I mean, now we've seen, I think somebody built it, is it Chango? There's a Ghanaian one called Chango. There's their crowdfunding strategies, right? So you go from local crowdfunding to more open crowdfunding. Can you get 100 people to give you 8,000 CDs? It seems like it's but it's a way to raise money. You're giving them a little bit of your business. Do people believe in what you're trying to do? To part of, 1,000 CDs might not kill them, right? And so can you get your first 100 people to give you 1,000 CDs? Is that something you can do? And then, of course, I've mentioned angel networks. There are angel investors, so high net worth individuals. The thing that's very funny about getting high net worth individuals to give you money is they have to understand startups and putting money in startups. There's a funny story somebody told me. They tried to get a really well-known, high-ranking person to join an angel investor network. So X number of, 10 high net worth people put money in a pool, will find startups, invest in them. And how many people speak Cree in the room? Okay, I'd have to trust. So person said, "Midiko tunyama or China, except me." So that's part of it, right? Our high net worth individuals might not necessarily have patient capital. They might not be willing to have patience for 10 years while you try and figure out the company. So also you must find the right high net worth individuals. There's also one that I really think that people should look more into is revenue-based financing, which is somewhere in the between sort of venture capital and the other end, which is, well, I'll give you some money, and then when you hit this milestone, depends on how you splice it, you pay me back this amount, or I take from your annual, whatever it is you make annually. That's something that essentially with good lawyers, you can put together. It's discussing so that, and maybe that's probably better for a lot of our angels, so that they can see immediate returns. The problem with why people also do not feel, high net worth people do not feel like they want to put money in, is that we haven't had high-level exits in Ghana, right? So in Nigeria, was it Paystack? Paystack was sold to, a huge US conglomerate, and almost everybody that invested in the very beginning, so people put in $5,000, they were making 40 times that amount of money, but it took them, 15 years? To make 40 times that money, all of a sudden, because I remember when the Paystack thing happened, people started calling me, oh, how do I invest in startups? Because now you've seen that somebody can make a stack of money. And so that's probably part of it. There's a lot of people doing this now, corporate venture vehicles. So there are a number of corporates. I think Standard Chartered has a corporate venture capital arm. Old Mutual has a corporate venture capital arm. And they are big corporates that will look for organizations that might align with what they are doing or might help them extend their customer base, and they invest in that. Again, that's very much about building out your network, finding out who is in these teams, and trying to figure out also, like, what are the company's strategic goals, right? So if you turn up to a corporate venture vehicle and you say, I don't know, they are a bank, and you say, I sell fish. There's no alignment, right? So you've got to understand what their strategy is and how you align with it. The other option, because I've spent a lot of time with a lot of bankers in the last week, and Ghana Stock Exchange people, is the Ghana Alternative Market. Now, I have to read this because off the top of my head. So this is a parallel market operated by the Ghana Stock Exchange. It is specifically designed for small and medium enterprises and startups that may not meet the stringent requirements of the main exchange. Now, the advantages is it has a lower stringent listing requirements compared to the main market. It makes it more accessible to a startup that is at least making some money. Access to capital. So listing on the Ghana Alternative Exchange enables startups to raise capital by offering shares to the public. Again, crowdfunding with a different suit on. Also, visibility and credibility. Look, if you can say to people that you are listed on the Ghana Stock Exchange, even if it's the Alternative Exchange, it enhances your company's visibility and credibility. The thing with that, though, is you must need to maintain transparent reporting and regulatory standards. Because some of you think that it's my startup. And, right? And if I take money, nobody should ask me questions. That's not how this, if you're going to take, look, if you don't want people to ask you questions, don't take money. It's not complicated. Do it on your own, get money from your customers, whatever it is, that's fine. But if you're going to take money from people, you're going to have to learn that you have to be transparent about how you are spending the money. Now, the last one I'm going to add to it, I think is the Tesla model, which is Tesla. If you know anything about how Tesla sells their cars, Tesla will say to you, it will take me a year to build the car. Give me the money, right? But Tesla and Elon Musk has done a lot of work to be trustworthy and believed by the people who use them, right? Again, back to the trustworthiness. And so Tesla doesn't build cars and it sits in the lot and then you walk in and you buy. You give Tesla money, and Tesla says, in 1 year, I would have built your car. So you are pre-funding your car. So now Tesla has the money to go and buy all the ingredients it needs to build a car. It builds a car and brings it to you. I honestly think that's genius. That is probably your most effective way, if you can pull it off, your most effective way of funding your company. Or you get, if you get, like for those of us in the startup ecosystem, one of the things that I used to do is add use one client. If I went into a new industry and it would be maybe a software that everybody in the industry wanted, I'd use that one client to build out and understand the system. And then when you are done, you now go and start selling to everybody else in that industry. That's part of what it raising funds. So they said I've got 2 minutes, so I'll end here. Again, only 10% of companies are going to be able to raise funds. And so you are going to, if you can do it, more power to you. But in more likelihood, most of you are going to have to look at other ways. You have to think outside the box, and your best bet is either your friends or family, your alternative options, or getting your customers to pay up front. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ethel, for that presentation. Now, you just learned how you can raise money for that startup dream of yours. But the next presentation, which should have preceded this one, will speak to you broadly about the ecosystem. And so you may learn that apart from looking for money, there are other things you might be able to find in the value chain or in the ecosystem to help you take your dream to the next level. Our speaker is Na Ajikai Ajay. Let's welcome her with a round of applause, please.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for having me. It's an absolute delight to be standing here at the National ICT Week to speak on startups and ecosystems. My name is Na Ajika Ajay. And I am a startup innovation consultant and a startup coach. I'm also co-founder of Startup Convos. So what really gives me the capacity to be able to speak on startups and the ecosystem? I have previously worked in Ghana Tech Lab, funded by MasterCard. And at Ghana Tech Lab, I played a lot of roles. I worked on a project called Ecosystem Coordination. At Ghana Tech Lab, we're doing a lot of digital skills training and then seeding innovation, so supporting startups through incubation and acceleration. But we realized that there was a lot of disconnect. So when it came to legal, when it came to funding and whatnot, the ecosystem wasn't coordinated. So I was working on projects where we were liaising with the Ghana Bar Association, we were speaking to ABSA, we were speaking to NYA to see how coordinated our ecosystem could become. I also worked on a startup business advisory support program where we're providing on-demand business development support for startups in the ecosystem. I did a couple of things. I think I won't go too much into them, but that's what gives me the capacity to speak on this subject, and that's what actually built me to become a startup innovation consultant and a startup coach. As a startup coach, one of the things I realized in my relationship with founders is that there's a lot of misconceptions, a lot of limiting thoughts that affect their ability to deliver and become sustainable when they begin to build their startups and their businesses. And so I have built that niche where I support founders as a startup coach, a co-founder of Startup Convos. I'll speak about Startup Convos as we go on. So please, the next slide. Okay, so what is a startup? So a startup ecosystem. So if you go to Silicon Valley, we know that's a very typical startup ecosystem, right? If you go there, you're not going to see maybe too many billboards or too many you're going to see really an intangible infrastructure, which you call an ecosystem. It's typically a dispersed geographical area or hotspot with high density of startup companies and entrepreneurs. It is intangible, and it's very sorry. it is intangible and it's, in its sense, driven by a lot of collaboration. So you see people in different organizations and different startups. And what really makes them have a form of synergy is the collaboration that really goes on in the ecosystem. So that's what a startup ecosystem is. I think most of you will be expecting that I would compare our ecosystem to Nigeria, to Rwanda, to Kenya, and the likes. But in my presentation, I'm going to focus on our own nuances because I want to be as very contextual as possible. So according to the Ghana Innovation and Startup Act, which is still underway, it is established to be the Ghana Innovation Startup Agency to set up an incentive framework for creating and developing startups in Ghana to promote creativity, innovation, and the use of new technologies in achieving substantial added value and competitiveness at the international, regional, and national levels. So you can find more of this information at the GhanaStartupBuild.com or .org. So I jumped straight into this because at Ghana Tech Lab, what we're doing was we positioned as an ecosystem enabler. But without the existence of Ghana Tech Lab, I haven't seen any organization or any agency positioning to support startups and the ecosystem. And so what the Ghana Innovation and Startup Act is seeking to do is to create an agency that would drive this. So next slide. Okay, so according to the Draft Innovation Act, what a Ghanaian startup is a business that uses innovation and technology in their business model to produce, commercialize, and scale sustainable solutions to pertinent economic challenges. Its human resources should not exceed 50. Its total balance sheet and annual turnover may not exceed 100 base points. A base point is 10,000 Ghana cedis. It's also in its early stages with high potential for growth, scalability, and social impact. So that's job creation, environment. It's also headquartered in Ghana. So the need for this definition was because we have the MSME definition as well. So we have businesses that have maybe 100 employees. They are making 1,000 cedis at the end of each month and whatnot. But to be able to define and be able to tailor and act laws, policies, and whatnot that would favor startups, we needed to be able to define this. So according to the drafts, these are the characteristics of a Ghanaian startup. Can move on. Okay. So components of the ecosystem. Like I mentioned, the ecosystem is really intangible, and there are a number of components that characterize it. Sorry I couldn't get something that really shows that all of these ones are very interconnected and very related in a sense. Depend very largely on each other because it's an ecosystem. So we have academic institutions. In Ghana, we have KNUST, we have the University of Ghana. In recent times, you see that University of Ghana has an incubator. You see that the KNUST also has an incubator. And all of these academic institutions are beginning to think of how to create and be able to churn out startups from themselves. And according to the Innovation Sparks report, KNUST and UG have been able to churn out so many of the startups that we have recently. We also have incubators and accelerators. So you have heard of MEST, KIC, I can mention them, a number of incubators and accelerators that are existent in the ecosystem. We have the private sector that is also playing a big role in the ecosystem. We have development agencies, and this comprises the donors, the funding organizations, the GIZs, the MasterCard foundations, all of these ones fall under development agencies. We have government institutions. Possibly we can say that NITA has a role to play in here. We have the Ministry of Business Development also playing a role as government institutions. We have investors. So like Ethel has mentioned, we have the venture capitalists, we have the angel investors, and the likes as investors in our ecosystem. We have, just to mention some of them that we have in Ghana, we have the Accra Angels, Accra Business Angels, we have the Njaro Capital, we have Quick Angels as well. We have events and networking. This is very, very important because like I mentioned early on, the ecosystem really is driven on collaboration and synergy. So we need to have a lot of events and networking so that we can interface, have discussions, and be able to build up in essence. We also have awards and supports. Now, the entrepreneur journey is very isolated. Now, so many times you be in your room and you're wondering, what's the next step? Where's the next funding coming from? How am I going to get the top talents that are working at Meta and the likes to be able to develop the platform or the solution that I have to build? And so a lot of times you need support. A lot of times you need to be celebrated. And so it's a very, very a very big component of the ecosystem. In previous years, we had the Ghana Startup Awards that was celebrating founders, that was celebrating institutions that were supporting startups. We also have in Africa, the Africa Startup Ecosystem Builders Summit and Awards, which I was a winner of in 2022 as Best Business Advisor. Thank you very much. So next slide. Okay, we also have ecosystem pillars. And these are very essential in the intangible infrastructure that we are working in. We have access to finance in terms of grants, equity, and debt. So grants is essentially free money. But that comes with a lot of monitoring and evaluation. You have to answer a lot of questions to the people who are giving you the grants. So when you are thinking grants, you think answering a lot of questions, if you like. We have debt financing as well that comes from banks. We have equity financing that comes from the VCs, that comes from the angel investors. We have human capital and talents. Human capital and talents, we are speaking about the founders. We are speaking about the employees that you have in the space. We are speaking about the people who are working in the development agencies. All of these ones, they form the talent. So the developers that we have on board, the developers that we have, the technical guys, your business developers, your marketing, your social media, all of these people fall under talents. Then we move on to access to markets. So this pillar is very, very critical. If you've been able to develop your solution in silos somewhere in your room, or you've been able to create a product that you think is very innovative, but you're not getting access to markets, it's a very big challenge. Some years ago, I know NIP was working on a platform to support startups where they could place their products on that platform and sell to international markets. I'm actually yet to know the progress with that, but access to markets is so critical, and linkages. We'll move on to access to business development support. So, as a founder, you are typically very passionate, very, very emotionally attached to your product. And sometimes in decision making, you may not have the experience that you need, you may not have the coaching that you need to be able to drive your business from one stage to the other, right? So access to business development support refers to the mentorship that a founder will need, the coaching that they will need, the consulting that they will need. And just to mention this, one of the key challenges for this in Ghana is how expensive consulting is. And for a lot of the investors, they are looking to see maybe your audit reports, your whatnot. They are looking to see affiliations with maybe KPMG and the likes, and these are very expensive for startups. So how are we able to navigate all of these challenges? That's access to business development support. We come to the regulatory landscape. The regulatory landscape refers to the laws, the acts, the bills, the policies that are existing in our ecosystem. And this is so critical because it builds investor confidence. If an investor should come into the Ghanaian ecosystem and realize that we have laws, we have acts, we have bills that have been constituted, they are able to identify that we have structure, and so they are confident to invest. But if for a number of years we have not been able to pass the startup bill, for instance, or the startup act, it becomes quite a challenge. So the regulatory landscape does that for you. Then we move on to media. And media refers to storytelling. And storytelling is really broad. For a founder, for your startup, I don't know how many of you here are founders and how many of you have heard about sharing your stories as you build and as you go along. It's so critical. Media also refers to the radio stations that we have, the TV stations that we have, the stories that they are telling about the young people that we have, the innovations that they've built, how they are able to access markets, and how they are able to be very innovative and creative about the innovation process. It's very critical that we have media to be able to share the stories that are important to our ecosystem and our startups. We can move on. Before that, how do you know about Meta? How do you know about Google? How do you know about Alphabet? All of these big ones, these big guys. It's because they've been able to tell their stories and tell it in a valuable way that has created so much visibility for them, created so much value for them that we are able to accord them with the kind of ranking and respect that they deserve. We are moving on to growth metrics and success factors of startup ecosystems. Now, this is a list of so many different pointers that actually give us an idea of how our startup ecosystem is ranked or rated. And these are pointers that I picked from different global platforms and how they rank startups. We have number of startups that we've been able to churn out as an ecosystem, total number of investment, total amount of investments that we've been able to receive, combined valuation of all the startups that we have. So how much value do we give to complete farmer? How much do we have for M farmer? All of these ones combined together. What's the valuation? Total accumulated value of exits. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with exits, but exits is when you are able to build your startup to a point where you are able to sell to a funder, I mean a VC or whatnot, and be able to say you are no longer maybe the direct owner of your startup. The number and size of unicorns that we have. And for unicorns, for those who are familiar with it, it has become a very interesting conversation that has been playing out in the ecosystem, because we begin to ask ourselves that as Ghana and as the pace that we are working, the pace that we are growing in, should we really be saying that our high net or highly valuable startups should be $1 billion? Should we say that they should be worth $1 million before we can actually receive the credibility as an ecosystem? It's a very big discourse that is happening in our ecosystem. If you go to the ESOs and whatnot, it's a very big conversation, and they're trying to find ways around it so that we do not have VCs, we do not have global organizations that are looking down on our ecosystem, in quotes, because we do not have unicorns as per their definition. We also have diversity index. In our times now, you know DEI is very important. So diversity, inclusion, and then equality. So how many women do we have in the ecosystem? How many PWDs do we have in the ecosystem? How active are they? And what roles are they playing in our ecosystem? We also have internet speed, cost of internet. These things are two very important factors in how our ecosystem develops. Because typically we are mostly working with software startups, right, and tech startups. So the cost of internet and internet speed is very critical for to be able to determine the growth metric or the success of our ecosystem. We have R&D investment, so important. Innovation really mostly thrives on research. A lot of the big ones that you are hearing about, they invest heavily in R&D. When it comes to even issues on marketing, you'll be amazed at the level of attention to detail that goes into it. They have neuromarketing. I don't know how many Ghanaian startups or Ghanaian even businesses are investing in neuromarketing, but they pay so much attention to details, and R&D is so important. But I can say that for Ghana, we have the GRIC, that's commercializing research, and so we are actually, we are growing. We have availability of basic tech services. So payment portals, crypto, transportation, all of these ones are also critical pointers. We have level of English proficiency. And I recently saw a TikTok by Ethel speaking about some local languages in Ghana, in our ecosystem. But why would actually measure by English proficiencies? Because most of our apps are listed in English. We navigate our phones mostly in English. Our keypads, most of us don't even have a tree keypad on our phones. We use English. So it's a key factor to consider. Corporate tax rates, corruption perception index, ease of entry and business creation, top universities per education. So we have all of these ones. We can move on now. Okay. So this is to give you a bird's eye view of what the Ghanaian startup ecosystem is looking like. So according to Startup Blinks, Ghana ranks 88 globally for the startup ecosystems around the world and 4th in West Africa. And when we see 88, previous years we dropped by 10 points. And is this really concerning? I mean, according to Startup Blinks, what they do in terms of their ranking is, we know the startup space is very fast-paced, it's evolving very, very quickly, and it thrives mainly on disruption. So possibly for the next system, they have been able to employ or deploy certain policies that have been able to be very beneficial to their ecosystem. But for Ghana, we haven't been able to do that, and so that makes us rank 88. We are also 4th in West Africa. We have Nigeria, Egypt, Kenya, Rwanda doing really well, and we are ranking 4th in West Africa. We have over 500 startups with $542 million raised in the last 4 years, just under 100 deals. And this is according to reports by the Innovation SPAC. The leading sectors in our ecosystem are agri-tech, fintech, health tech, logistics, e-mobility, and renewable energy. So, okay, I think I'll mention those ones in the next slide. So currently we have an influx in digital skills training programs for youth. And what that means is that you are going to have access to a lot of quality talent. But with the access to a lot of quality talent, we have a challenge there that I would mention in the next slide. Moving on, we've also been able to raise $65.7 million in the last year, 69% year-on-year decrease in our funding. And this is just 2023, according to the Innovation Spark. So move on. So these are some founders that we have in our space. At the top, we have Valerie Labi, and she's the founder of Wahoo Mobility, and it's an e-mobility startup. So they are working on electric bikes, electric vehicles. We have here the founder of Complete Farmer, doing something really interesting in agric for Ghana. We have here, I'm missing her name, but she's also a female founder in our ecosystem. Now to the down, we have the founder of M-Pharma. M-Pharma is doing incredibly well in health tech for Ghana, and they've been able to scale into other markets, so that's great news for us. It's a win, so we celebrate it. All right, so to challenges and opportunities, I mentioned that there's a lot of skills training for young people. You've definitely seen ALX, you've seen Sonko Academy, you've seen a lot of these skills training hubs that are giving high-level training to the talents that we have. But in our conversations at Startup Convos, what we've realized is founders are lamenting that they have great talent coming to their businesses, but in about a year or two, they are beginning to move to Meta, they are looking at Microsoft, they are looking at all of these big guys. And so talent retention is a very big challenge. And also talent development. I think one of the things that we have for our ecosystem is heavily replicate what is already existent. So you're not able to really be able to tell that for my startup, do I need a social media person now? Do I need a content manager now? Do I need a research and development person now? And all of these things are very important because in talent or human resource management, you should be able to identify what talents you need at what time, at what stage in your business. So that's it. It's something we should really be focusing on, else we'll have majority of our talents in Ghana working remotely for Meta and Microsoft, and that would be a very interesting narrative that we'll be driving. Now we move on to sustainability of existing startups. It's a very big challenge because we've had a lot of startups go through the MEST, the KIC, and the likes, but in about 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, they are folding. So how can we really get them to be sustainable? One of the proposed solutions that I came up with is a mass business development center to support feasible, viable businesses with equity sharing. So can we have something where possibly some private sector individual or the government has a mass business development center where, I don't know how many of you know Junior Achievement Ghana? Wow. My time is running, so I'll just quickly run through. So we have access to finance as well, media and storytelling. All of these things are challenges in our ecosystem that we should be looking out to address. I think I've mentioned said a lot about the ecosystem, possibly, and hopefully you have also picked some insights from there. I would like you to pick up your phone and check out Startup Convos on Instagram and Twitter. You will see some very interesting insights that we share. My co-founder is here. She'll be on a panel discussion. But I am Naa Ajika, co-founder of Startup Convos, a startup innovation consultant and a startup coach. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. We're going to move swiftly to our next presentation. And so, how many of us play games on your phones? Oh, some of you are boring. Play games small. It's sorry. So we're going to try and manage the time and squeeze some Q&As in there somewhere. I think Ethel's presentation and Nas' presentation has drawn some questions. But we're going to jump into this. Now, the gaming industry, at the moment, I think on the continent alone, we spent more than $200 million on games on this continent alone. Globally, it's in the region of more than $65 billion. No, it's actually set to hit about 137 billion in the next 3 years. Why do I share this with you? Simple. If there's money to be made, why not you? Our next presentation will give us insights into the value chain of the gaming industry and the prospects that it holds. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome the CEO of Pop Out and Esport Academy, Maximus Kweku Ametogo.
Thank you, DG, for this opportunity and all protocols observed. So we were asking how many of us play video games, and I'm not seeing hands. Yeah, video games. Yeah, on your phone. So whether it's a snake one that used to be on the monochrome screen, you know. How many of you play FIFA? Oh, wow. Then we are done. So we are looking at the gaming industry. I've been in that space for more than a decade now, and I have a company called the Esports Academy. So we train people to become professional gamers, right? And then we help you develop skills in that space too, from live streaming to branding, social media, and all that. And we look at the value chain in that space. Every year we carry players outside Ghana for international tournament. Last week, we just came back from Morocco for African Esports Championship. So we look at the value chain in the space. So next slide. So what is the gaming industry? So when we talk about the gaming industry, it talks about the gaming, the development of games, so the concept. So if you're a storyteller, you are part of that ecosystem. You can tell stories, and then we can gamify the stories into levels and challenges that people can play. It can be single player, it can be multiplayer, and different variations of it. Then we come to the production. So somebody or a team of people will give treatment to the concept that you have, your story that you want to tell, and then they treat it into a game that people can play. And then the game needs to be distributed so that people can have access to it on their mobile phones or their consoles or wherever they want to play the game, and of course they monetize, right? So in gaming, either you pay by buying just a gun, a virtual gun in the shooting game, or buying some power in the game itself to fight your enemies, right? So those are some of the things that how people monetize the game. And of course, they said in modeling, whatever you use for free means you are the product. So if you are using Facebook for free, you are Mark Zuckerberg's product. Facebook is not his product. So when you are playing the video games for free, you see adverts. And sometimes you lose, and then they'll tell you your level is finished. You have to watch an advert before you continue. True or false? Yeah, so they are selling you that. So that's how they monetize. So these are the key areas in the value chain when it comes to game development. So before you see somebody playing a video game, they've gone through all these processes, right? From the concept development for people who program it, and they have artists. So if I see a character in a video game, it's not just one person who sat down and then drew the person. How the shape of their face, their eyes, the character, the costume, the complexion, everything that you see of a character in the video game has been conceptualized by a team of people, right? So we'll look at some of that. So the key areas in the value chain from the game development, the artists, writers, designers. You realize, how many of you know Valorant? Valorant. How many of you play Valorant? Yes, so you have somebody. So we'll look at that too as well, where a Ghanaian did a voiceover of Valorant. Then we come to publishing and distribution. So those who build the consoles for you to play on, the PlayStation and Xbox and PC games. And of course, we are mobile first. So a lot of people are moving into the mobile gaming space. And they are making money. So we have hardware manufacturers. So if you have an idea about how even a console should be redesigned, it's also part of the gaming industry concept that you can sell to people. And then you can have an online platform where people can also play the video games, right? And then gaming accessories. So I need a headset. I need a good microphone. I need a mouse when I'm playing the video games. All those ones, we have companies developing the gaming accessories, right? These are the high-end stuff. And one of the major aspects is the esports and competitive gaming. And sometimes you confuse esports with gambling. They are not the same. Esports is just electronic version of traditional sports or simulation sports. Then the gambling is different. So that is the challenge some of us have. So people play video games as a profession. So all the major football leagues, what do you call it, Premier League, Bundesliga, League One, all of them, they all have the esports version. Now FIFA, there's an E-World Cup. FIFA has an E-World Cup. They have Commonwealth. We have Olympics also introducing esports into that space. So there's a huge market for people who play video games or also organize video games and that. And then we have people who are into the gaming content development. So you play a video game, run commentary on it, or teach people how to play FIFA or how to play Valorant or any other video game, and you make money from either sponsors placing their logo within your content that you are developing, or YouTube or all the Twitch and the rest playing adverts within your video so you can make money. And of course, monetization model. So like I said, if you want to go for premium, you can go for premium. But if you want to go for freemium, you are the product, right? So that's how the game platforms make money. Next slide. So globally, this is the revenue in a gaming market worldwide. It's expected to reach $445.3 billion globally. It's bigger than movie, music, streaming times 2. That is the gaming industry. And we have a lot of stories in Africa that we can treat into video games that we can make a lot of money from, that we are not doing. And I'm excited that for the first time in Ghana politics, a political party has put esports in the manifesto. It's quite exciting, right? So we have so this is a projection. So it's in the MPP manifesto, you can check it out. Yeah, for me, being in the esports space, it was quite exciting seeing something like that. Because see, FIFA, Commonwealth, and then the Olympics, they realized the young people, they are not interested in going to sports stadium to go and see them watch people playing. They play on their phones, they play on their consoles, anywhere they are. Just this month, the Esports World Cup, they just finished it in Saudi Arabia. Guess the prize pool. Who knows the prize pool? $60 million. How much was FIFA? The actual traditional FIFA. It was around 80 million, 100 million to share amongst all the winning teams. This is esports. $60 million. So even if you're 15th in the game, you could get almost $25,000. So that is esports. And Saudi Arabia, in fact, they've cut a budget of $60 billion for esports development for the next 5 years. That is a huge investment in that space. South Korea, Finland, Singapore, the USA, they are all investing in esports. Now you have over 260 universities in the USA that will give you scholarship as a pro gamer, right? So that is the kind of thing we are looking at. Next slide. So this from Statista. So they say gamers are increasingly seeking games that offer realistic graphics, engaging storylines, and multiplayer capabilities, right? So there's a skill set that is lacking. And in Africa, we have that. Can you imagine if you can treat all the Anansi stories into a video game? All the Anansi stories. In fact, all the Chewa series into a video game, right? So we have a rich storyline that we can treat into video games. Next slide. So a typical, this is FIFA FC24. That's a video game. When you see this picture, this is not natural photograph. This is graphics. You see how realistic it is. So you have people who design this. So you have a game design skill set from those who understand football, how a player kicks the ball. I can't kick with my toes and the ball will curve in a certain way. The people understand how it works. Those are part of the skill sets that they need for sports simulation design. So if you love football, you have the skills as to how to kick ball in certain angles and directions. You need that skills. The AI programming. So how they can even program each of the football players, they record their statistics every year and they program it into the video game. So the way Haaland will behave naturally, that's what has been programmed into the computer game itself. So when you are playing his character, you know how he kicks his ball, the precision with which he kicks, his dribbling skills and all that is all programmed into it. So if you understand football, you can also help in develop a football game, right? So you have user interface, how it looks like. So you see the field, that's somebody's area, color scheming, how the stadium must look like, even in the video game. They, as much as possible, simulate the natural, sports stadium, the physical one that you see into the video game, so that it's not totally different. Then we have people multiplayer design. If I kick a football, and then, okay, if I have an opponent, the way the opponent will also behave towards me. So if I'm attacking Haaland, and I'm either, which defender, who is your favorite defender? Maga. So if the skill set that you have as a defender when you meet him as an opponent, it comes into the programming of the video game as well. So if you understand how Maguire plays football, it also helps in designing a simulation or a character of him in the video game that is similar to how he behaves. The technical skills are, of course, physics. You don't like, Pythagoras theories and quadrant and the rest. They're all in the video games. So if I kick a ball at a certain speed with a certain strength, it goes in a certain tangent. It's all programmed into the video game. So mathematics and physics comes into it, right? So animation. Then when you see this guy moving in different directions, the proportion, the reflections on the jersey and everything, the muscles must appear the same thing. Lighting and all that is also part of the skill sets that you need, right? And then you come to the creative side where they do 3D animation for you to see that. So fixes goes into that game. The next slide. Then you have the PUBG Mobile, right? So shooting games. If I want to start shooting people from here to 37, then there are barriers around. So people sit down and plot the arena for the shooting, the obstacles you meet, the enemies you meet on the road, whether you jump a wall, broken wall with even objects on They create the environment so realistic that when you are even playing the video game, you think you are in it yourself. And it all depends on people's understanding of real life stuff. And then the combat mechanics. If I go and meet somebody, if we are either shooting or fighting each other, how should we do that? And they have various guns and weapons that they are going to use, and they all have different levels of power. Whether you're using a pistol or you're using AK-47, and then the precision with each of the guns. You have to understand all these things before you can even play the game well. So if they say we should do shooting game design, and you don't understand how each of the guns, the features of each of the guns, the strength of each of the guns, the advantages of it and disadvantages, you can't design a game, that will simulate the real life stuff. Technical skills, of course, rendering, and the fixes comes into it as well. If I throw tomatoes at you, the way to splash is different from when I break egg on your body. Likewise, if I shoot a gun that can penetrate your skull or, chips off your skin, it's all understanding those basic stuff and the programming into it. So you need that. Then the sound design. When you hear footsteps, the sound of a gun, people moving and then hitting a wall or a leaf, scratches their skin. You hear all those realistic sounds. The same thing we watch in movies. They go into the programming. So it's part of it, and the visual effects. So that if there's an explosion, the explosion won't come as squares, right? Broken stuff. You want to see the smoke, you want to see all the fire, the flames and everything into it. So those are some of the skill sets you need when you are designing, a game. The next slide. So I'm using just 2 games to use. So this is Astra. Astra is the character they developed for Valorant. And the voiceover was done by a Ghanaian lady. And she made some money. And then they work with Letty Arts, our ARAM Tevia team. And they developed the character from Ghana. And it's one of the people's favorite characters, has some superpowers and things. And they will be insulting in the game, our boy and things, in the video game, from Ghana. Right? So common skills, of course, you have the C++, the programmers, and then you have Python for the game logic and fixes. And then you have these game engines that you can use to develop the game. So they are there, Unreal and Unity. And most of them, in fact, they are almost free, right? You download them, you can play around with it to develop simple games for yourself. And you have artists, engineers, designers. If you are a graphic designer, a color schema, storyteller, visual artist, your skills are needed in the gaming industry. The issue is that the gaming industry is cross-discipline. We need almost every discipline in gaming development. Intellectual property, if I come with a game concept, I can register the idea. It's my idea. So if you go and execute something similar, you've seen it, I can sue you for it. If I develop a character, the look and feel of the character, you can't go and copy it. Otherwise, I can still sue you for it. Right? So you have all that in the space. So whatever skills you have, it can be used for the gaming industry. Next slide. This is Ghana. So the prospects, it is estimated that we're going to spend $360 million on video games in Ghana this year. Last year was $121 million. Game downloads, subscriptions, and the rest. In fact, digital music that we crave and love is about 1.4 million last year. So you can see the video game is huge. So this is Kamza that Letty Art they've developed. This is in Ghana. So you can see the characters, they've developed the environment, and that's Kamza character there. So we have the potential, we have the skill sets, and we can develop a huge industry in esports in Ghana. Next slide. Right, so we organize esports events. So this is one we did in, this is Coconut Grove. We did that one about 5 years ago. So we have a sim racing game. So you sit by the wheel and then race as if you are driving on the street. Some of our simulator sim racing has been used to even train drivers in Ghana. So you sit in it, learn the driving, drive on the road, make all the mistakes. If you crash somebody's car, you won't pay for it in the video game. So when you are done, then it scores you. You even have track simulation games that you can pick products from one location to the other, fuel the truck on the way, and get there on time, and it scores you based on how you behave on the road. So we do that. We have female gamers too as well. This is, we did this at Lisa. So GFA, work with GFA to form Ghana's first e-football national team. I'm sure most of you haven't even heard about it, called the Black Asteroids. So we formed the national e-football team that is there, the Black for GFA. So you can see the young people playing football, playing the video game there. The next slide. So, next one. Thank you very much. So it is very important that we see the esports space or the gaming as very lucrative. Whatever skills that you have, it is needed. Okay, it's not just for technical people. If you have a nice story that you think it can be gamified, talk to any of us or any of the game developers that we can treat it into a video game that you can also make money. People can play video games. You hear of Angry Bird. Angry Bird, the company struggled for a long time, and when they got Angry Bird, they made billions. They've done movies, souvenirs, and all that. Now, almost all the movies, the big box office movies, they are all moving to video game. You go and watch it in the cinema, they have a video game version. They make more money from the video game than the cinema box, right? So you have the highest grossing movie, about $2 billion, but the highest grossing video game, Pokemon, is $90 billion. So welcome to the gaming industry, and you are invited to also make the money some. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maximus. I've seen from your presentation where I will specialize. I'll be going to court a lot. There's some lawyers here. I've got work for you. I'll come up with the ideas, we'll register it, and then we'll cross our legs and wait. As soon as someone does anything, we'll be making our money that way. But seriously, it's a very broad industry. There's a space in there for everybody. Even if you're a fashion designer, don't think that you're only meant to make clothing for people to wear. Most of you have avatars on your social media. There you go. So the possibilities are infinite. I would like to crave your indulgence. One of the things I haven't seen happen so far is a Q&A. I asked some questions earlier. No one put their hand up. But we will make room to only take 3 questions. Only 3. I see a hand up at the back. And I know ASP here has a question. I hope I got your rank right. Hallelujah. Okay. I don't want any trouble. All right. So ASP is actually first up because he had. So we'll take your question and we'll take a. So there's room for just one more question. And let's keep it brief so that we're able to make up for time.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, my question was to be addressed by the startup team,
Okay.
so to speak. We try to encourage our wards, our children to enterprise, to set up businesses, particularly in the technology field. And the concerns they come up with is that as soon as they go to regularize themselves by registering with GRA, for instance, they keep receiving calls text messages and quotations of how much tax they must pay per year. And when they are just trying to nurture the ideas, which could take them even a year, they are already being slapped with tax debts. What would they tell us about such things, and how do we overcome it? Thank you.
I lived through that 20 years ago.
All right, thank you. Maximus, my question is to you. So I think you've done a very good job trying to give us the value chain so far as the gaming industry is concerned. The idea of us understanding the value chain is how can Ghana plug in the long term to also the 455 billion for us to have a chip of it. So right now, looking at it the long term, how do you think the gaming community can collaborate to try and start training people in some of the areas that we have identified from the very young age? I can think off my head, NAFTI, who do a lot of animation. There are other things, but so how can we, the community, collaborate with the educational institutions, as fan clubs, as all those sort of things, to start developing these very young ones in some of these areas to try and build capacity over the long term to make sure that Ghana will identify itself as maybe we are expert in maybe this aspect of the value chain, to make sure that over some years to come, you identify Ghana as a destination where you can go for some skill set within the gaming industry. That's my question.
It's as if you were there with us just before we started.
Good afternoon. I want to find out whether there is any opportunities for those who are doing betting in relation to esports.
I hope you got it. Okay. All right. Maximus, you have 2 questions, so you answer now, and then
I don't know which one to answer. The money is sensitive, so let me answer the money one. For betting, it's about the challenge. You have 2 people to choose from or multiple people to choose from. So I say, okay, if I play the video game with my boss, Mr. Autry, he will beat me. So you will bet that he will beat me. Then when he wins, you get your winning, money. So that is betting. So normally some people, what they do is that they can see that when we are organizing tournaments on our own, there's an event happening somewhere, they will go and be betting on the players. Right? That's what is happening. But as much as possible, because we are going to the esports development, and it's also age sensitive. So we don't want to introduce the children to all those betting and the rest. For the adults, they still do their, even people bet on, chicken race and things. So, dog racing, chicken racing, camel racing, and the rest. So that is for the betting. And that's what I will just say about that. And of course, the people can develop game, then people can play the game as a way of betting, right? So you can bet on the character and fight and all that. I'm sure if Ariam was here, we would have given more ideas on that. But when it comes to the development, for me, I'm very excited about that, the policy, that they're going to develop animation and game factory on top of the esports, like the esports component of it. Now we have esports clubs in at least 7 universities so far. So we've organized Ashesi University, Valley View, Central University, UPSA, University of Ghana, so and then Telecom University. So we are forming the esports associations or teams for most of the universities because they have a tournament coming up. And we have some partnership that when they win, they can go for international competitions for universities, and they can even win scholarships to do their masters and all that. So that is being done. Then we have, Leti Arts, they've developed a syllabus for even the game development in Ashasi. So now ICT students and engineering students in Ashasi can also, take a course in game development. We have other universities who are also interested now. For me, if we start from the primary school, JHS, it's going to help a lot because if they have all the skills to tell stories, somebody can write a story, then somebody will develop the characters visually of the story, then somebody can work on the various levels of the story, and then they can build all those mechanics into it. So if you teach the children from beginning, by the time they get to university level, they'll be making a lot of money. Trust me, the internet is evolving into the gaming space. So if you hear metaverse, they are just using the gaming engine, right? So that's where we are heading. Where we have the Vision Pro from Apple, you can see a lot of things just by using your eyes to move icons and open folders and things. It's all in the gaming engine that you can build all those functionalities and the rest. Now, there's a video even on Meta. You know Meta, so they've also so from Apple, Facebook, and all of them, they have investment to gaming. Then you wonder, why are they all going to gaming? From Amazon, all of them, they're also all going into gaming. Now, the Meta one, what they've realized is that when one of these Manchester United, I've forgotten his name, player got injured, when he was being trained to come back, they used a lot of virtual reality stuff to train him to come back, to come and play in the field. Now, medical, even operations are done using the same virtual reality and augmented reality stuff. It's all part of the gaming, those gaming engines that they use to build that. Engineers, they learn how to even build, aircrafts. They simulate it before you go on the actual components. So you can even build virtual libraries for engineering students where they can build cars and things virtually before they will go and build the actual car. There's a company called Relu Technologies. Young people, they've even done a simulation of the FPSO, the oil rig. Now they are using it to train people. So you can learn how to repair components of the oil rig and the rest virtually just by wearing the virtual reality headset. So that is where gaming is going. That is the augmented and virtual reality is going, and we need to let the young people and the children learn how to play it. And for me, that's how we will develop that ecosystem in Ghana. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maximus.
GRE. Part of this, two parts. Part of answering the question is also possibly in the government work, in the work in pushing the startup bill, right? Because there are certain things that are peculiar with startups. And so giving startups room to breathe. What's his name? Ariam used to make the joke, there's a reason why they used to be called Letty something and they became Letty Art because they had issues with GRE. This is a problem we've all faced. On one side, I think the work in making actually passing the startup bill is one of the most important things to ensure that startups can just breathe while they try and build it. Now, if you are in that situation currently, I don't know how much of it what I could say up here, but part of it is maybe prototyping and piloting and doing things without the regularization until you get your first customer. I know it's not the most PC advice, but sometimes it is build a prototype, get a paying customer first before you go and do the registration. Sometimes it's a chicken and egg case, but it is maybe negotiating with the customer. Also maybe starting rather as a sole, what's the name?
Sole proprietorship?
Sole proprietorship is an easier path than when you are at a place where you are a little bit more comfortable because, GRE terrorizes all of us.
Mm-hmm. I think, Ohene, just a minute.
Yeah.
Oh, are you done? Okay, all right. Thanks very much, Ethel.
I just want to add this briefly. In the Ghana Youth Policy 2022-2032, it's a policy passed by the National Youth Authority, and in the policy, there is part that says, per the definition of Ghanaian youth between the ages of 18 to 35, you should have some tax exemptions by the GRA. But most of the time, young people or young businesses have not explored that opportunity. So if you're a founder and you are between the ages of 18 to 35, please see the GRA. There are other tax exemptions too, that if you are a young person or a business between these ages and you operate, you have dependencies, I think from 55 to 65, you also have some exemption, because now if you can prove per your income statements and other payment transactions that your mom or your grandma or your dad depends on you and they are within these ages, you can also have some exemptions from the GRA. So I will entreat you. I am very particular about that. I sat on the committee that did the policy as a technical consultant. So please visit the NYA and also the Ministry of Youth and Sport and also the GRA to know more. That is not specifically for startups, but that is if you are within the ages of 18 to 35. Thank you.
Thank you, Ohene. I'd like to also just point out that at least the two major political parties, in terms of their manifestos going into the current election, have talked about tax breaks for startups. It, in my opinion, one of the biggest inhibitors we have in this country. Imagine relocating 20 years ago and going to the GRA voluntarily to register, and then you're giving a bill even before you start the business. And I remember telling the guys, I told him to his face, I said, I'm walking out of this place, I will do business before I pay you any tax. Because it just does not make sense. But that's what is in the law. And so you can't blame the GRA. Maybe Maximo, seeing us, there's, as a matter of fact, what the 455 is 2024. But if you take the compound average growth rate of about 7.3%, you're looking at about $660 billion by 2029. And if you want a slice of that, I think that your federation should start lobbying and pushing for some of these things to be, because otherwise we're always going to say Africa is going places, but it will not benefit us. We all know how many foreign businesses walk into our country and get exemptions. It's about time it started benefiting us. Anyway, thank you very much. We're going to go into our panel discussion. We're about 45 minutes away from wrapping up. So well done to you all for your attention and contribution. The panel discussion will look at the government and startup. I love this. Perfect timing. I hope there's someone from GRA on that panel. It's regulation and funding, and it will be moderated by Akosia Osei. Let's welcome her with a round of applause, please.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's an absolute honor to be here this afternoon to moderate the conversation on the government and startups. Okay, I have 35 minutes, which is quite not enough for our conversation, but we'll stay within time. I want to thank the DG for the opportunity, as well as NITA. It's an absolute honor. So at this point, I'll be introducing our speakers or our panelists for the conversation. And I have on the panel Ethel Kofi. So please, with a round of applause, kindly welcome Ethel Kofi. I also have Jude Sebe. Jude, kindly join us on stage. I also have Shadrach Inusa. Shadrach, if you are here, please join us on stage. And lastly, I have Nathan. Okay, so let me quickly take my seat. All right, so before we start the conversation, I would want our panelists to introduce themselves briefly because I believe we'd want to know what they do and how they can contribute to the conversation. So we'll start with Nathan.
Thank you very much, Akosia. So my name is Nathan Soja. I'm a software engineer by profession, and I'm also an admin at Dev Congress. I would dare say it's the largest developer community in Ghana, and we've been representing and supporting developers in Ghana, and I dare say outside of Ghana too. So that's me.
My name is Ethel Kofi. My day job, I run a tech consulting company called Adele Technology Consulting. Yes, that's my day job. Everything else is by the way.
Thank you, Akosia. Thanks, everybody. My name is Jude Sebebwaten. I am a lawyer. I work as an associate at a law firm called 8 Geeks at Law. We are a law firm that provides legal solutions to technology companies. As part of what we do, we have an initiative to support startups called Geek Night. So we try to link startup founders to investors, because that's usually the gap. So that's basically what I do.
Hi, my name is Shadrach Inusa. I'm the community lead for GDG Accra, Google Developer Groups Accra. Actually, we are the largest community, in fact, the developer community group in Ghana. So please, yes, we are the largest. We are in Accra, we are in Kumasi, and then we are in Tamale as well. And we hosted the largest community tech festival in Ghana so far. Yes. All right, so so that's GDG Accra. And I began a startup, that's Sprinix, a tech startup. So that's basically what I do. I just bring developers together, so I do more of the community stuff. So yes, we are the biggest. All right, thank you very much.
Okay, please let's give a round of applause to our panelists. Okay, so I realize I also didn't say where I'm coming from. So I'm the co-founder of Startup Convos. Basically, we are democratizing education on startups and its ecosystem. And we've been hosting conversations on Twitter. We are looking to have live conversations, but currently most of our conversations on Twitter. I'm sure we have some audience here that have joined in because we've been quite consistent with some episodes and regulation. Yeah, so thank you for having us. So zooming right into the conversation, this question goes to Ethel first. I mean, when you were given your presentation, I could tell that there have been a notable success in the startup ecosystem. I mean, talk about funding and Ghana having to be ranked as one of the top 5 when it comes to startup investment. I think it's commendable, even though it's just a percentage, yes. I would want you to touch on what could be the contributing factor to we being ranked as one of the top 5, regardless of the challenges we are having on ground.
Well, I think, look, there are a number of things that work well for Ghana. Where we are, our position in relation to Africa, right? So our English speaking, also, I keep getting the number wrong, and I've said somewhere 16, but I double checked it's 12%. So the IFC, which is the World Bank, it's a World Bank agency, did skill mapping, and one of the things they said was about 12% of the developer skill sets that sit in Africa actually sits in Ghana. And so one of our big advantages, we actually, as much as we might say people don't have jobs and that sort of thing, we have a lot of the skills in here. Also, we are seen, I have to be careful when I say this, we are also seen as, so if you want to launch into Africa, West Africa, you want to go to Nigeria, and you are uncomfortable on shore, Ghana is a great place. It's a startup environment to start from, to learn the West Africa region, to move from here. It's also very safe if you're if you're bringing people from all across the world to work, it's also a safe place. And that, I think, has contributed into our growth, young population, skill sets, safe environment. That's all helped, yeah.
Thank you very much. I would also want to add that if you have questions, kindly note them. I believe afterwards, if you have some time, you'll be given the opportunity to ask them. So this question would also go to Nathan. You can have your mic.
Sure.
Talk of your space. We were having some background conversation on how developers have access to funding, and you mentioned some challenges. What do you think, or what initiatives do you think that the government can actually put in place to support startups or developers who are, say, tech founders? Yeah.
So I would say that startups is just a group of developers and then, let's say, a couple of management type people or marketing people. But one person cannot just make up a whole startup, but we do have individual people who can actually start and build something. Yeah. Now from there, I'll say one of the easiest ways a government can support our startup ecosystem is that we can take tertiary for an example. A lot of my colleagues, I wouldn't say a lot, because not everyone could actually build a finished product by the time they were finishing the university. But through our final year project, I saw some really good projects that could have actually been, let's say, if there was some funding or if there was some sort of a pipeline that could accelerate it to market. I'm pretty sure we'll start to have some very interesting applications that can solve some genuine problems that we do have as a country, in education, in health, and I think many more. So that's one place that maybe government can start from. We should maybe have a pipeline straight from tertiary, such that certain final year research, final year projects can be further developed and expanded upon to serve the market. Yeah.
So this would also go to Shadrach, since Shadrach also plays a role when it comes to developers, and I mean, you having a larger community of developers. Are there existing initiatives supporting funding for your industry or for your space?
Oh, okay.
From the government side.
From the government side, just I think 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, I was able to hear a whole lot about the government tax exemption policy, actually. So hearing it here again, actually, I was really happy that it's being talked on again for others to also get to know about it. So from the government side, we have not really seen anything, but I know there is a lot. And I think the issue is the tech communities are not being included in this, right? And I really applaud NITA on this, because last year NITA started working to push this kind of policy with the tech communities together. We had a Twitter space with NITA. It was really, really massive. And they wanted the community to also get involved. I think Dev Congress also know about that. So I think something like this will work, because I'm hearing there are a lot of government initiatives for startups. With the tax exemption myself, I've applied for it. I applied for it just last week. Last week. So it's in process. I called and they said it will be ready by next week. Yes. So these are some of the things I think we would like to hear. But personally, I don't know much about government sponsoring startups, but I know there are something like that there, right?
You know there's something like that, but you're not really clear.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, that's fine. So to our lawyer, one of the major challenges that startups face has to do with regulation. I mean, I could speak to some conversations that we had that usually even when startups are building, they don't have the capacity to go for a lawyer or to help them with their structure in terms of the legal aspect of things, even corporate governance and all that. As a lawyer, I mean, could you speak to some regulations that, I mean, startups face, regulations do startups need to grow and develop bigger in Ghana, and how can they receive support amidst the limited resources that they have?
Okay, I think from the outset, it's important to point out that getting an idea off the ground is hard everywhere. So running a startup, whether it's in Ghana or it's everywhere in the world, is very, very difficult, right? Having said that, in order to look at which regulations would really help startups, it's important to go back to the challenges that startups usually face, right? And so one of the challenges is funding. I've heard a lot about it today. Another one is when you have inconsistent or complex regulatory frameworks, right? So in business, one of the things that would make your business easy is when there's certainty. You're going to talk to investors, you're doing all of these things. If something is true today, but it won't be true tomorrow, that's not good for your business. And so you don't want a regulatory environment that you cannot predict. And so you file papers here today, tomorrow you go back to the same place, they say, no, we've changed that system. It's something else, and you have to pay so and so much. So that's another challenge. The third challenge is that startups usually have a hard time finding legal support, especially in the early days, because they do not have, the money to start. And then back to the funding investors and so on and so forth. So to answer your question, we need regulations that would make doing business in Ghana easy, regulations that create frameworks that are predictable and also are not so complex. Because if it's complex, then it means that it's harder for you to comply. And if compliance is hard, you would be non-compliant, and it would affect your funding or affect so many things, right? And you need government policies that provides startups with tax breaks, like we said, government policies that incentivizes investors, right? So if you have like an angel investor network, what do you do for them? Ethel mentioned earlier that getting VC funding is very hard because a lot of Ghanaian startups want Silicon Valley VCs, right? And so how do we create local VCs? What incentives can the government create for us to have things like that? So in a nutshell, that would be my preliminary observations on that question.
So, a follow-up question to that is, so are you saying that the current regulations or laws we have makes it difficult for startups to grow or build? If you're saying we need...
No, I wouldn't say difficult for startups per se, because then it would mean that they are targeting startups. I think that in Ghana, sometimes doing business generally is hard. And so then it becomes doubly harder for startups because they are usually small businesses, small ideas. And so if you look at it from the two standpoints, regulation and funding, you would realize that if you have a great idea, but that idea is illegal, you can't carry it off the ground, right? And so we've seen, especially in the tech space, people who build fantastic products, and then when they are launching, they don't consult anybody when they are building it. When they are launching is when they find out, oh, you actually cannot do this. But they've spent a lot of their money, a lot of their time, a lot of energy into doing it. And then if you have a bright idea and you don't have money to fund it, there's also a problem. You cannot get it off the ground. And so I wouldn't say there are policies that are hindering them. I would say that the general business environment is a bit hard, and it's harder for startups, which is why I'm also, like Ethel said earlier, equally excited about the Startup and Innovation Bill, which recognizes that these people are different. They have peculiar challenges, and so we have to treat them differently and then make their lives easier. Yes, I don't think there are laws that specifically target them to make their lives difficult, but
Okay,
if we're able to make their lives easier, it would help. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much. So we'll go to the startup bill, and Ethel will take this question for me. So,
On the startup bill?
okay, our other panel can add up, but probably you can give.
Can I disrupt you a little bit?
Okay,
So on this conversation about
regulation,
startups don't have money to pay lawyers. But if you're going to work with startups, you're going to also have to innovate how your business models, right? And so I know Inshira, and I will have exactly the same conversation with Inshira, is Because if your business model is I'm on retainer and I pay you X amount of, and you are targeting startups, and it's in that all the different industries, the advisory, the consultings that work with startups, but you create a business model where startups can't integrate, right? So it's better for a startup to have paid for a 20-minute, 1-hour session with a lawyer to get exactly what they need and go away, and that's useful, or for, I don't know, virtual platforms. You are doing it with medicine now, medical stuff, where you can get, it's not, I'm not just targeting you, sorry, but but there is a conversation to be had about all those of us all the organizations and industries on the periphery of giving to startups, in the insistence that you must evolve to be able to meet your customer base, right? So sorry, this is the point I wanted to make. Yes, sure.
Yeah, that's a very important point. At our firm, startups are part of our target. We work for tech companies, and so there are tech startups that we represent. And we notice what she's talking about, which is that the Ghanaian startups do not have many, and so most of the time, they don't even approach you. You find out about them much later. So we have an initiative, if anybody's a startup here, we have a startup desk in our firm where we provide almost at no cost startups that are incorporating. So you are starting your business, you need founders agreement, simple agreements like that. You just need somebody to put your documents together, which vehicle works for you and your founders, drafting your shareholders agreement, and so on and so forth. Those simple things we do at almost no cost for startups. People that are starting out, we do that. And so I think that's very important. That's very important.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry. Okay, now what's the startup, the bill question you want? Because you wanted me to, sorry, could you repeat that question? Because I was focused.
I mean, I haven't asked yet.
Okay,
yes,
let's go.
I think you were touching on
yes.
Jude's points. Okay.
Thank you, Jude. It was very helpful.
Okay. So I mean, for startups that we have here, very young, you can see Jude afterwards. He'll give you more information on how they can support you if you don't have the funding to go in for a lawyer.
And then when you become a unicorn, come back to us.
Okay, so the question on the startup bill. So we know it's currently under consideration, and there's also an upcoming AI policy as well. These are significant developments. How do you see these policies influencing the funding landscape for startups, particularly in the tech sector?
Well, I think the startup bill the startup bill and variations of it, I'm not quite sure who the funders are, but it's a push across the continent, right? Okay. Multiple countries have instituted the startup bill. I think the thing I like about the startup bills, there's been a lot of stakeholder consultation, a lot of input from the different walks of life. And so I think that just from the perspective of just people who are suffering it, all came together to work to put this together. It's very important. The problem has always been, now we've got to push it through Parliament, now we've got to have the government assent to it. And then you've got your political atmosphere that comes along with it. And honestly, my fervent prayer is that just like we made the affirmative action bill was pushed through, I hear Parliament, they stayed till midnight and they worked on it. I think, and maybe it's also partly it's our fault because we haven't, there are different aspects of tech. The fintechs have a great lobby, but I think as a collective, we don't have a strong lobby. Right? Mm-hmm. And somebody was saying the same thing to me this morning. We don't have a strong lobby because the best time to influence the politician is in an election year. You know what I mean? It's an election year. And we should have, at least for the startup bill, we should have, as a collective, been making more noise and pushing for it. Because I'm actually really afraid that if it doesn't happen in this time frame, then, whatever happens, there is a new cabinet, there's people settling in. It takes another a year maybe for people to, whatever it is, we'll have a new cabinet, right? Because there will be a change of president. And so we have to give them that process, the new MPs, everybody to come in, and then before we start the process, and I fear that the momentum will be lost. With the AI policy, about 6 weeks ago, we worked on the first AI curriculum for technical universities. And so I was very lucky to be able to get a group of experts together. We went away to Cape Coast, and for 2 weeks, we worked on building this. I think that the AI conversation, and the Ghana Institute of Journalism, I just had a talk there where they were also concerned about AI. I think the AI conversation is just making sure we are positioning ourselves as a country to protect intellectual property, to protect, our way of doing things, so that, we don't have the AI companies dictate to us how things should be, that we say, here are our guidelines, right? Nigeria has just finished with it. And so there's a lot of work that needs to be done there for, one, on the startup bill for us to get it over the line, and two, the AI thing, that's going to happen because I think there's a lot of funding for AI conversations. We just have to make sure that, just like we do in Ghana, where we are so good with policy, but we put the policy on the shelf and do absolutely nothing with implementation, that we are also clear that implementation is part of the writing of the policy.
Thank you very much. And I think it's really taking long, because it started somewhere 2020, and it's like 4 years down the line, and we still not heard much about it. So I just wish we could, the major stakeholders could fasten the process. So this question goes to Shadrach. So Shadrach, you once said that the next tech revolution is not going to be born in a garage, but it's going to rise from a tech community. When I saw that quote of you online, it really struck a chord, because for me, it spoke to how you are looking at tech, the drive of tech communities to contribute to, the general tech landscape in terms of its growth and development. The question to you is, what is the role of NEIP for startup funding and benefits?
Yes, so this particular question. All right, so just exactly what I mentioned earlier on, I got to know about NEIP exactly 2 weeks ago. And yes,
wow.
Yes, 2 weeks ago. But then I've made a little bit of research on what they're about. Just yesterday, I had a call with one of their staffs as well. I've been to the office too as well. So apparently, I went to the GRE office to get my VAT stuff, my company registered and all that, because I'm also starting a startup. So when I got there, the lady was processing my document. I went there first day, second day, she started processing my document, and she was like, you cry. It seems you are below 35 years. Why can't you go for tax exemption? I said, taxes, what? I don't know about it. And she was like, oh, there is this NEIP. So I was like, oh, okay, let me check. I've actually been on a panel program. That is the Ghana Domain Registry event last year. I was on a panel with one of their directors, and I didn't know. So I think the one issue about we Ghanaians, everyone in Ghana, is we are prioritizing politics more than anything else in Ghana. So a government brings an initiative, then everybody sits in like, oh, NPP Nedibae. So you just sit back. Oh, NDC Nedibae, you sit back. We don't look into it. I think we are all in it together, including myself. We get so much pissed with politics to the extent that we don't listen to anything else. So I was supposed to know about this last year. Can you imagine? I was supposed to know about this NEIP thing last year, but I also didn't pay too much attention to it because my intention and everything was, oh, it's just maybe some youth thing. I didn't even think about it much. So getting more information about it, I noticed it comes with a lot. This tax waiver thing actually is going to take off the tax on my startup. I'm not going to pay tax, which I'm very, very happy. I'm waiting for my documents, to be honest. So this is not NPP NDC, but I think no matter what happened next year, we should have the same thing still standing because it's really a good initiative. Then during my call yesterday, I also noticed something. The lady was like, oh, and there's another thing. I was like, okay, what's the next thing? She said, so when you are a startup and then you need NSPs to work for you, right? You need NSPs to work for you, or maybe you yourself or your colleagues who are helping you to help you out during your, development. Instead of going to NSS to do the registration, because you have to pay some percentage, right? What she told me is that you will come to NEIP. When you come, they will give you a letter. You take it to, or they will send a letter to NSS. Then what they will do is that they prepare some documents for you, and the person you want will rather be transferred to them, as in the person will be working with them, but then the person will be working for your startup, so you don't need to pay that percentage again. So the person will be working for NEIP, but then the person is working for your startup. So you don't need to pay as a startup founder, yes. So you don't need to pay that percentage again. So I was like, why didn't I hear all these things? Like, why didn't I? Because one of my guys there, he has not done his service yet because he's targeting some kind of, he could have done it, under my startup. I didn't know about it. So I think these are some of the benefits that NEIP is giving out, and I will urge all the startup founders to, please, I've experienced it myself. I'm not lying actually, and I'm not into politics, but I've experienced it myself. If you decided to maybe be thinking of politics, then you are doing yourself, because the day I went there, I saw someone in NDC color. NDC party color, yes. Scarf and everything. A student actually, she was coming to pick an NSS document, and she was wearing all those things, right? And when you enter there, you have the president picture in there, right? The portrait in there, you have everything in there. Like, I was just looking at it, everybody was looking at her, but she was doing a normal, you see her moving with the NDC party colors. She was moving up and down, preparing a document. So this is not politics. Please, just go and take advantage of it, right? If you are below 35 years, just go and take advantage of it. Then it's going to help cut off the tax, because I heard the tax thing is really disturbing a lot. Myself, I was running away from it, but the GRA lady was like, you can't run away, so you better go and do it. So this an awesome benefits, official project from them. And then I think I was actually telling Steve from NITA that I need to talk about this, so my colleagues also get to know about it as well. And I informed them on the platform as well that this is something which is ongoing, so they have to take advantage of it. Yeah. Okay.
This is laudable. Please let's give it up. So Nathan wants to add up.
Yeah, Nathan from the largest non-sponsored developer community, largest non-sponsored. Okay, so what I'm going to add to the NEIP thing that I spoke about is it's a laudable program. It's something that I think the government should keep pushing. But the problem that we have with Ghana's government is that there's the issue of non-continuum, okay? NPP will start something, 4 years down the line, NDC comes and then it's gone. I remember JIDA. I don't know what happened with JIDA, but it's no longer existent. Okay, all right, good. It's now YEP. YEA, great. Now, the issue from that is, imagine 20 years from now, we could be like India, all right, who is shipping tech talent all over the world. The top 3 companies, I think, globally tech is led by Indians. And I believe Ghana, we can get there someday. But if every 4 years, some wonderful project started by the NPP or the NDC is just cleared completely, I don't think that is going to take us anywhere. So I'm looking for that, maybe if it's all possible, to put it into policy that NEIP gets to say for, say, the next 50 years. Nobody touches it. Let startups grow. Let our resources, our human resources also get the skills for how they build the startups. And maybe someday in the future, we can also call ourselves Africa's India. Yeah.
Please, let's give it up. Okay, so would now be touching on startup sandboxes. I'm tempted to give the mic to Ethel again, because I think your focus area is more on startups and tech as compared to the expertise of my panelists. That's why most of the questions are being directed to you. But then there are other panelists who are open to answer if they have insight. Are there available startup sandboxes, for tech startups in
I'm confused.
Ghana?
What you mean by startup sandboxes, right? So Bank of Ghana has a sandbox for fintechs.
Right.
NPA, the National Pensions, is it association, agency? Also NPRA. There we go. Also, so that's why I'm trying to figure out what you mean by.
So aside the fintech space, I'm aware of the innovation and regulation sandbox by Bank of Ghana.
Mm-hmm.
Outside the fintech space, do we have sandboxes for other sectors?
Honestly, from what I understand, I know a couple of corporate venture vehicles have sandboxes. So I'm on the board of Old Mutual, and Old Mutual is in the process of putting together we're working with the hubs and putting together sandboxes so that the developers can come work with us. As this is my small pitch to you. If you've got a product that touches insurance, pensions, and doing interesting things with it, where Old Mutual is opening up a sandbox, so you can at least try, and I think we help you with like AWS credits and things like that to make your life easier as you build it out. And the hope there is that if you have a really great product, then we can partner with you, or maybe we can even buy it off you, depending on what the product is. I know I've said this before, Standard Chartered, I think, has a sandbox. Stanbic also has a sandbox. So I think, there are lots of spaces. I think there's a lot, maybe let me tell you, there's a lot of corporate venture vehicles out there. Corporates, especially the banks, and insurers that are looking to find partnerships with startups, and so are reaching out, which is why you are getting these sandboxes and things like that. And the idea is that, if you're doing interesting things, maybe we can offer a way to make your life easier, and then we can collaborate. And I think that's something to look out for. So sometimes people will say, these corporates are running an event and they don't know what they are doing and whatever, and that's fine. But sometimes just go to these events anyway, right? Just for the networking, to understand what they are trying to do and what they are trying to figure out. Also, whatever you're building, if there is a regulator in that industry, it'd be good, because a lot of the regulations now are creating, Bank of Ghana has this innovation desk. NPRA now has this innovation desk. There are few people, as few of the regulators are trying to bring innovation in there. So part of it, and it also leads to the point about information. And I don't know whether NITA would be the best vehicle for because you are our regulator. Okay. Right, there we go. Okay. So I think, so that's one. But also, I think it'd be good, and NITA is probably best placed to do this, in terms of the collective information. I think one of our biggest issues is there's all these things happening, but the information is in silos, this department of government, this department of government, and it'd be good to maybe have spaces where people can go, whether it's one desk where people can just come and find that information to be able to make that. I don't know if I answered the question, but.
I mean, you basically touched on some available opportunities that people are not aware of, because there were some of the things that you mentioned that, I mean, especially the Stanbic Bank. Yes, I think Jude has an add-on.
Yeah, so with regulatory sandboxes, they are usually for ideas that are not regulated yet. So if you look at the Bank of Ghana's sandbox, for instance, if your product, what you're launching is already regulated, you go ahead and apply for a license and so on. But if it's something that it matches with the bank's direction, but they don't have a present regulatory regime for it, then they'll put you in the sandbox so that they can study what you're doing within a safe environment, and then you'd come out of it, and then they probably create a regime for it. Apart from the Bank of Ghana's sandbox, it seems to be the only vibrant sandbox at the moment. The SEC was starting one, didn't really take off. But I think that we could also possibly have a government-sponsored sandbox that allows people with all sorts of ideas to come in. Then the government directs which regulator is best for whatever idea the person is coming up with. Because then it would allow people to just innovate and not have to think about what am I doing, where am I going. So just innovate, then they would have structures to say this regulator, that regulator, or if we have to create a whole new regulatory regime for that. Just before I give the mic to you, I wanted to say that from what the two speakers said earlier, that from my personal interaction with government agencies and government policies, somebody mentioned earlier about criticizing to correct. I realized that most of them don't have the will to not help. I think the worst extreme of what they do would be indifference. It's not that they do not want to, they are trying to cripple people. And that's the same with government policies as well. So I think that sometimes if we approach it from the standpoint of us giving them the information, because we've seen situations where government agencies push back on a certain idea so much because they don't understand it. And if you explain it, you'd realize that they come to adopt it. The following year, the idea that they pushed back against when you were sending it to them, they've written a whole policy on it and put it out to allow other people to do it. So I think we should be less cynical as Ghanaians and not collectively say things don't work, and try to engage more. And so if you have a product, you want to launch it, you go to the government agency, try to take the approach of explaining what you're trying to do, what it would solve, and so on and so forth, and you'd find a way.
Okay, thank you. So please let's give a round of applause. At this point, I mean, we are done, but we'll take our final words from our panelists, and then, so final words. I mean, we have major stakeholders here, so this is an opportunity for you to also share your views or probably your request. You don't know where we'll go to, yeah.
So I'll just say that given that it appears that some of these things that government has put in place are not very visible to us, the developers and the startups, I don't know how they're going to go about it, but some sort of marketing campaign, some sort of accelerator set up by government should allow us to be more involved and see these opportunities and make use of them.
Excellent.
Oh, yes, and we are from Deaf Congress, and thank you. Yes, and Deaf Congress as a community will give you a platform to, meet certain other developers just like you and communicate and build something amazing, yes.
All right. So lastly, Ethel, then, we would wrap.
I suppose I'll use this platform to say, listen, you've done an amazing job with NITA, DG. Because, I've been around a while in the industry, and we know NITA has not always been open to connecting, and so we love what you've done with it. And I know I'm one of your online. I probably torment your team online, but I really, I honestly, you've done a good job. We've been through cycles where it was very much NITA was an agency on one side and didn't really integrate. I hope that over time there will be more integration with the tech communities. There are more opportunities for us to sit and discuss. So that's just my...
All right, so Jude.
Okay, so my final words, I would say that startups should think of themselves as ideas first and not rush into a vehicle. So maybe you're not at the point where you should start a company. You don't have to. Your idea can run without it, you can register your IP without it. And so seek help early, understand what you're doing. A lot of Ghanaian startups would incorporate, but the shareholding is only for them. If you are going to be 100% shareholder, you don't really need a company if you are not seeking funding immediately. And so all those things are important, so seek help early, understand what you're doing, speak to us. We are not always that expensive. It would help you.
All right, so just to say this, first I would like to also thank NITA as well for their awesome work. I think NITA has a lot of vision, but the young boys, Stubborn Academy, I remember during the call, they hit and the guys also hit back. They hit and the guy also. I mean, that's the kind of this thing that we are going through now. So I would like to appreciate what they are doing so far. Apparently, I was part of the first squad that applied for the certificate, the IT certification, and I am using that certification to apply for my NEIP. I mean, they saw it and they was like, oh, okay. They didn't complain. They didn't talk much after seeing the certificate. I was like, yeah, it's from NITA, so you have to process the document, right? So I think it's a great initiative, but my colleagues will always fight me. Yes, they will always fight me, but that's how it is. That's how it has been. And yes. And one last thing is, you will notice one thing about Microsoft, Google, and Infobip and the rest. They all began from the garage, right? Yes. And then this time around, the startups, we are all going to come out from the tech community. And as I always see, the biggest or the next tech giant is going to come out from the tech community. So join Google Developer Groups Accra. We have our Dev Fest coming up in September 14th. And yes, so join us. All right, thank you.
All right, so thank you very much for your audience and your attention. Okay.
Thank you very much, Akosia and your panel. I'll be sending all of you a VAT invoice for overrunning. I intend to pay my tax on that. The rest will come to me. Thank you. We've got two quick presentations. Let's get cracking on that one. I'd like to invite Mr. Nick Patel, who is founder and CEO of Clink Gold and Bank of Bullion in Dubai, to speak to us about blockchain technology behind Clink Gold.
Thank you very much. First of all, ladies and gentlemen, thank you, DG, thank you so much for giving me the privilege to speak here today. I hope I can help bring together some of the topics that you guys have covered this week. I know digital inclusion has been one of them. I also know digital trust has been one of the topics this week. And indeed, this afternoon, sitting for the last couple of hours, I heard things like tax being mentioned, support from the government in terms of sandbox environment. I heard the potential for e-gaming. But I want to explain a couple of things. A lot of the things that will happen not only in the economy of Ghana, but generally in the economy of Africa or globally, all starts with one thing: the power of the actual money that you're spending today. In terms of the cash that sits in your pockets, in your bank, today it's known as a cedi. We all know the cedi is the currency of Ghana, but what some people may realize and some people may not realize is the US dollar is the world reserve currency under which we are kind of under the umbrella, right? Let's talk a few statistics. Anyone have an idea over the last 1 year what the price of the cedi has been against the US dollar? Any ideas? Any? Yeah. So I just had a quick look at the statistics this morning. A year ago, the cedi was trading around 11.4. This morning it's 16.53. What that means in real terms is your purchasing power, SETI for SETI, has been reduced by 27% in 1 year. That's a lot. Now, if you're buying goods and services, and obviously we're an international economy, whether you're from Ghana, I live in Dubai now, but born in India, raised in England. The point is, we still buy goods and services from other countries and from abroad. So if our SETIs are now 27% less powerful than they were a year ago, how does that bring the economy into a strengthening economy year on year when the power of the dollar is becoming stronger? Hopefully, this change will come as I begin to explain to you the power of CBDCs. Anyone know what a CBDC is? Central bank digital currency. But what we are looking at and what we are piloting with a few other African countries is what we've coined or we've termed GB CBDCs. Gold-backed central bank digital currency. Next slide, please. So just a few statistics. I know that some amazing figures were mentioned. The gaming industry were globally worth $500 million. In Ghana alone, I think Mr. Maximus mentioned 360 million per annum. But look at the amount of money you guys spend on mobile money transactions. It's 124 billion US. So all the mobile money payments in this wonderful country actually is insanely high. You know, if you consider 124 billion of mobile money transactions, $1 on average through your mobiles goes through the economy 11 times in a month, 144 times in 1 year. That one SETI, or $1, however you want to put it. So what do we have in the population of Ghana? Okay, we have a population approximately of 35 million, of which potentially 21 million are unbanked. What I mean by unbanked is they don't have access to ID or they don't have the regular ID, so they're not in the banking system, i.e. they are using mobile phones for goods and services, which are used by topping up with some of the mobile operators. Now, how can the government help not only the unbanked, but also the banked, and also increase revenue for themselves as well as citizens by transforming how the money system works in Ghana? Well, one of the things, or one of the clever things I would say, the government have done over the last few years is the Gold for Oil program. Now, some people may agree, some people may disagree, but the Gold for Oil program has brought massive, I mean incredible prosperity to the fortune of Ghana. Just in the last couple of years, the amount of gold sitting in your central bank vault is 8.74 tons. Now that's a significant amount. It's around, give or take at today's value, almost $800 billion. Sorry, $800 million. And I can only see that amount going up over time. Now, why is this relevant? Any ideas why it's important to have gold inside the central bank? Any ideas? It underpins the SETI. Having more gold in your central bank vault, what it does, it strengthens your local economy. It makes the SETI stronger against the US dollar. So when you're purchasing power over the next 2-3 years, the more gold that sits in the central bank vault of Ghana, the stronger your SETI will be against the dollar. Therefore, that 27% deficit you've seen in the last 1 year will slightly go back in your favor. So from 16, it'll probably come down to 15, 14, and, you know, fingers crossed all the way down as strong as it can become. Next slide. So, just to talk about the reliance on or the necessity for US dollars. Why does Ghana need US dollars? To purchase goods, to get imports, to have all those services that are required to run a country. Because you can produce as much as possible within the country, but as we are all globally now, we're all international citizens. You may be a Ghanaian, I might be an Indian with a Dubai residency, but we're international citizens. And we need goods and services to move around the world. To do that, we need to have, well, we all now use the world reserve currency, which is the US dollar. And let me just talk facts about the US dollar. I'm not, you know, I love the West, and I've had many, many successful years of doing business in the US. But one of the things that is coming over the last 10, 15 years, it's a government that have printed $34 trillion over the last 52 years. And that $34 trillion is backed by nothing. It's a promise from a government to pay the bearer. $34 trillion, just think about that. That number in itself should scare you, because that number has been printed relentlessly, more so in the last decade and more so in the last 3 years since COVID than any other time in history. And if there's one thing that history has shown us, governments that print excessive money cause inflation globally, where you've seen the power of your SETI fall by 27%. They have caused excessive spending in terms of military to have to print the $34 trillion. But what we should concentrate on is how we can now reverse that situation and bring the SETI back into power and use some of the wonderful resources your country already has. Now, Ghana is not only one of the biggest suppliers of gold, it's one of the most powerful and stable nations within Africa. So, next slide, please. What we hope to do is explain some of the technology that we have created. Now, in terms of CBDCs, most of these systems, most governments in the world, at the last count is 180 countries, are actually testing what a CBDC can do for their economy and what it can do for global trade. What that means is all countries, perhaps not now, but maybe in the next 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, all countries will be trading almost 100% digitally. Notes and coins in circulation as we know it will not exist anymore. The reason they want to do this is to improve money flow within the system, obviously to see all the transactions within the economy, and more importantly, it's a conduit to collecting taxes, which is how governments run. And you know, that's fair, because the advantage for you guys as citizens is amazing as well. It allows you to transact internationally without having to go through a lot of banks. It'll reduce your costs over time. If you're selling, if you're developers, if you're gamers, if you're selling goods and services, the ability to trade with some other person in a different country, that'll give you that power to work internationally without all the protocol that currently exists, because the governments will, in an example, they'll actually be working together to make things work. Next slide, please. So, what do? We have a blockchain-based system. Blockchain, if you guys don't know it, it's just another ledger system. It works in the same way we use technology today. We have servers, we have clouds, but what does a blockchain allow you to do? A blockchain gives you the ability to store data, transmit data, collect information, but it's immutable. What that means is it's uncorruptible. Once the data is on, nobody can change it, nobody can falsify it, nobody can corrupt it. Now, the other advantage of using blockchain-based systems is it's expandable. You can move it to any country, you can use it in any part of the world, and the important part is any citizen, any person, whether you have a digital or an analog phone, can use blockchain technology, because the system can sit behind all technologies. Next slide. So, what is the advantage of creating these gold-backed central bank digital currency? Well, first and foremost, increased gold reserves stabilize Ghana's currency by curbing inflation. As I just explained, we've had a huge amount of, I think the average inflation in Africa as general is 16%. I'm not sure what has Ghana been in the last year, but I think it's around 8 to 9%. But what gold can do behind the central bank with the support of your government, putting more gold in the central bank vault will help curb inflation. It'll mean every cedi that you earn will become stronger. It means every cedi that you earn will actually make you more money over the next 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. Now, if you just look at the price of gold to cedi, does anyone have an idea how much gold has risen in the last 1 year? 31%. So let's just putting it out there. If you had one cedi, which is not gold backed, and it's dropped 27% in relation to the dollar, but on the other side you had 1 GB CBDC, a gold-backed cedi. It'd still be 1 cedi, but the power of that 1 cedi in terms of its purchasing power has gone up 31% because it's 100% gold-backed. Which one is better? The gold-backed cedi, right? Now, what we are trying to promote and what we are piloting mainly in eastern part of Africa is the potential to work with central banks to promote GB CBDCs. And I'll slowly explain how that works. The idea is very simple. We have technology which allows citizens through mobile operators to put an app in their phone and you can directly buy from your government gold-backed cedis. Now, what happens is the funds are routed via the blockchain directly to the treasury of the government, who then allocate physical gold to go in the vault. So every cedi that goes through the system directly goes to the government, who then have time to fill gold in the vault. Now there's 2 options here. That same gold could have been used to purchase oil, correct? Because that's the G4O program, the Gold for Oil program. But ultimately, or the opposite side of that is to use that same gold to put in the vault of the central bank, and then you can use that digital gold to buy more gold. So in essence, what have you done? You've actually kept your gold within your own central bank, and you've increased your purchasing power to buy more oil without sending the gold abroad. In essence, Africa's gold should belong to Africa, and Ghana's gold can belong to Ghana. So the system in itself